Oh, god dang it. I turned in one of those ball things my brother likes again. James!
What?
Why am I a country ball?
Well, I just thought we would get more views on our videos if we made the videos in country balls.
Can we do a video?
An area of World War II history that is widely overlooked is that of the Republic of China. Nowadays, we think of China as an industrial superpower rivaling the United States. But for the first half of the 20th century, that was hardly the case. Back then, China was fractured, unstable, and corrupt. But how did China get to where it is today? All the answers to China's rise to glory are in these 50 years. So sit back, relax, and grab your government-issued nutritional supplement, because we will take you to see the miserable tale of China.
You could argue that all of this began in 1842 when the British seizure of Hong Kong following the Opium Wars, or way before that with Portugal's seizure of the city of Macau in 1557. But for time's sake, we will quite literally start at the turn of the century in 1900. The Boxer Rebellion happened in Beijing, or Peking if you're European. They were called Boxers because they did martial arts. The Europeans had been taking control over parts of China because China has a lot of luxury resources, like porcelain, silk, and tea. The 19th century had become known as the century of humiliation for China, and for a good reason. Russia seized Outer Manchuria in 1858 and began taking normal Manchuria because they needed a warm water naval port. The Empire of Japan took over Korea from the Chinese, who were a puppet of China. Russia also took this part of Western China. France set up a sphere of influence in border areas to an Indochina colony, and Germany took over Qingdao.
11 nations fought against the Boxer Rebellion. The Boxer Rebellion went on to destabilize China even further. In 1911, there was an uprising in Wuchang, and the Qing government was overthrown. The Republic of China was declared, with Sun Yat-sen as the first president of China. At the time, the Qing were still technically in charge, so Sun offered one Yuan Shikai to become president if he finally got rid of them. Shikai did eventually force the Qing emperor, who was 6 years old at the time, to abdicate the throne. Now begins a new age for China. A free and Wait, what? Emperor?
Yuan Shikai declared himself the Emperor of China in 1915. But the thing is, after you free people from being ruled by one person for pretty much their entire history, and then you become ruled by one person again, people aren't usually too happy about that. So the empire was quickly overthrown.
Then China did what China does best: break apart into warlords. Warlords all across the nation took control over pieces of the country and began fighting over land and resources. Sun Yat-sen, seeing the state of his country, came back from his exile in 1919, which, by the way, he was in exile, and reestablished his party, the Kuomintang. The Kuomintang aimed to unite China by crushing the warlords. Remember this.
In 1919, there was a student protest against the government's reaction to the Treaty of Versailles. This grew into a radical Marxist moment, which was the reason the Chinese Communist Party was formed. Let's fast forward to 1925, where Sun Yat-sen is dead. A certain Chiang Kai-shek took power over the KMT after Sun's death. Chiang was ready to launch the northern offensive, but he needed help, so he went to the Soviet Union.
So I hear you want my help.
Yes, I do. I need you to help me attack the warlords.
Alright, I will help you, but on one condition.
And what is that?
You become friends with CCP here.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Originally, the Communists and the KMT worked well together, but then Chiang got suspicious and dismissed the CCP advisors. He was convinced that the CCP planned to overthrow the KMT, so he began a purge. This angered not only the CCP, but the left-wing part of the KMT, who established a rival government in Wuhan, but they later rejoined the KMT. Also, while this was happening, the KMT finally overthrew the central government and sorta united with China.
In 1927, the Chinese Civil War had begun. Chiang had a plan for the creation of a new China. Step 1, get rid of all the warlords and the communists. Step 2, establish a democratic government. Historians debate whether or not China would have gone through with the plan or stayed a dictatorship, however. Meanwhile, in the north of China, Japan has just invaded. You see, Japan was expanding their empire at the time, and Manchuria is rich in natural resources. Japan needed these resources to fund their war machine, so they invaded.
For the first time, China was relatively stable. Chiang hoped to improve the lives of his citizens, so he launched the New Life movement. The New Life movement was basically those be kind things that you would have in school, but on a much larger scale. Chiang also opened the Academia Sinica, which was a college in the country, and opened several banks. The nationalists also had top training and equipment thanks to the Nazis. Remember the Chinese Civil War? That was still happening. The communists were surrounded in the Jiangxi province of southern China, but they embarked on the Long March. It was an escape to the Shanxi province. The CCP, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, traveled over 6,000 miles.
In 1937, on the border between China and Japanese-held Manchuria, Japanese and Chinese troops opened fire on each other in what became known as the Marco Polo Bridge incident. Japan used this incident as an excuse to launch a full-scale invasion of China. The Japanese pushed south of the Great Wall of China and made naval landings in the Yangtze Delta near Nanking. Speaking of Nanking, after the city fell to the Japanese committed horrible atrocities to the city and its people. Chinese civilians were set on fire, shot, buried alive, drowned, decapitated, impaled, etc., and women were taken away to be slaves. Things were so bad that to this day, China still hasn't forgiven Japan for what they've done.
The communists and the KMT, seeing the threat to both of their existences, decided to put civil war on pause and formed the Second United Front. The first one was the original alliance. The two sides worked well together, and China was not alone in this war. The Germans sold equipment and sent military advisors to China, and although the United States wouldn't join China until 1941, a volunteer brigade of American pilots under the command of Claire Chennault, back then that was a boy and girl name. These volunteers became known as the Flying Tigers. U.S. forces finally arrived in 1943, and Chinese pushed back Japan quite a bit.
And then Japan died after getting 2 atomic bombs dropped on them, yada yada, new technology with gunner link in the description. Now, the day after the bombing of Hiroshima, the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria, and now, in 1945, they still own it. Now, get this. The Soviet Union and the Chinese Communist Party are, get this, communist. And communists tend to like each other. So, the Soviets give Manchuria to China. The KMT still could have won if the CCP had gained Manchuria or not. But an offensive was delayed, making this 2 missed opportunities for the KMT. The CCP made steady gains, and by 1949, the KMT fled the mainland for Taiwan, but they held on to their official name as the Republic of China to this day. And China, the communist one, claims Taiwan as its 23rd province. There's a link to the Wikipedia article used to research this video in the description, as this topic is insanely complex. Thank you for watching. This has been Playhouse Films.